Good evening. Here we are on a Friday on the road to 100 episodes with the 70 episode taking place right as we speak. Now today, we are going to dive into last night's game between the Indianapolis Colts and the Tennessee Titans. So, are you ready to get your fix? Well, let's get started with the Colts taking on the Titans in a matchup that decided who would be the number one seed in the AFC South. Now, this was no normal game at all. This game actually means a lot going down the road. Going into this game, like I mentioned yesterday, the Colts were 5-3 and the Titans were 6-2, both sitting at 1-2 in their division. Now, last night we witnessed the Colts defense make that Titans offense look non-existent. The Titans couldn't even score a single point in the second half because the Colts had them completely figured out. Okay, if you remember, I said due to Derek's performance against the Bears, he would rush for at least 100 yards. That's exactly what he did last night. He ran for 103 yards, and 52 of those yards came in the second half. That was literally the only thing the Titans offense was able to do in that second half because the Colts secondary was on another level. Offensively, the Colts looked pretty solid and did a lot of good things. Okay, last night was Michael Pittman Jr.'s coming out show. He hasn't really been too involved in the offense too much the first 8 weeks, where he only had 14 receptions with a total of 135 yards and no touchdowns. Okay, but last night, Pittman was targeted 8 times and had 7 receptions for 101 yards and a touchdown. No touchdowns. He had 1 rushing attempt for 21 yards. Okay, in one game, he already has half the total receptions from the first 8 games and almost surpassed the total yards as well. Okay, Michael Pittman Jr. might just have took the number 1 receiver spot from T.Y. Hilton, who isn't performing like we're used to seeing. T.Y. Hilton hasn't had 100 yards receiving in a single game since December 23rd, 2018, which is 21 straight games, and hasn't even scored a touchdown since October 20th, 2019. That's 13 straight games. He just doesn't look like his old self and might just be on his last leg in his NFL career. Now, the Colts also have a really solid backfield. Even with Marlon Mack out for the season, the Colts went into the 2020 draft and drafted Jonathan Taylor with the 41st pick in the second round, and since then has only had one pretty solid game, and that was in week 2 versus the Minnesota Vikings, where he rushed for 101 yards and had a touchdown. Now, recently, though, Taylor has been having a tough time getting things going the past 2 weeks. Jonathan Taylor rushed for 22 yards rushing and then 9 receiving yards against the Lions. He had 27 rushing yards and 7 receiving yards with a rushing touchdown against the Ravens. And then last night, he had 12 rushing yards and 25 receiving yards. Now, he just can't get on a roll, but the Colts have enough depth at running back to run the ball just fine. Because when one guy doesn't get the job done, the next guy should be able to go get that job done. Okay, that's exactly what we saw last night, where Taylor had 1 or 2 nice runs, but it was apparent that he wouldn't be the guy versus the Titans. So the Colts had to give the ball to Nyheim Hines, who really hasn't done anything the entire season other than be a receiving back. Now, last night, Hines stepped up in a big way. Okay, 12 rushing attempts, 70 yards, and a touchdown. He also caught the ball 5 times for 45 yards and a touchdown. Okay, that's a pretty solid game if you ask me, and he made the most out of it. And without those 2 touchdowns, the game becomes a lot closer, and then we might have seen the Titans take the game. Now, the Titans have some work to do because coming into that game at 6-2, you shouldn't let the other team hold you to no points in that second half. It just shouldn't happen, okay? Defensively, they need to figure out their pass rush because they just can't put enough pressure on the opposing quarterback so that he can make a mistake. Now, with them going out of their way to sign Jadeveon Clowney and still having a pass rush problem is not good news, because that means they just literally wasted their time signing this guy for what? Nothing to happen, okay? Now the Titans played a good game, okay, for the most part last night, but they need to perform better, especially when the division title is on the line. These teams meet one more time this season, and I expect the Titans to come out really strong and try to get that dub. So we'll be looking forward to that matchup, because I guarantee you it's probably going to be for the division title again. So my top 3 performers for the Colts are Phillip Rivers, Nyheim Hines, and Michael Pittman Jr. And for the Titans, I got Derrick Henry, Corey Davis, and then Ryan Tannehill. Well, that's going to end our discussion today, as now we wait for the rest of Week 10 to play out this weekend, going into Monday with many, many more good matchups taking place. Anyways, enjoy the weekend of football. We'll see you Monday, and you just got your fix with the Wicks.